Hello there everybody, this is another impromptu video. This time we'll be taking a look at CanDo 3, how to use CanDo. Now of course this video is only going to be important or even interesting to people who want to code CanDo. So I know there are plenty of people on my channel that love to watch my videos, but this isn't going to be one of those videos, I'm afraid. So there's only probably going to be a handful of people watching this, but just in case there are, you never know, I'm going to make a video how to use CanDo. Now this video will make a number of assumptions. First of all, that you've got an Amiga set up with Workbench 3 on it, and the second of all that you've got CanDo 3 or available files for CanDo 3. You can find those on the EAB file server, I think, and other places around the internet. Just search for CanDo or CanDo 3. It's definitely the third one that you want, because the other two aren't as capable as the third one. But the third one only works with Workbench 3, and I think the early ones work with maybe Workbench 2 or something like that. So if you want something that's more compatible, you can have to downgrade. But this one is going to be CanDo 3. And also, if you go onto the Aminet, you'll find a CanDo 3 upgrade patch, which upgrades it to 3.08. And if you install that from the Aminet and upgrade CanDo, that's a great start. And lastly, also, if you take a look at my H page, you'll see CanDo 3 Simple Demos Disk. And if you download that for free, that means that a lot of the scripts that we'll be talking about in this video, you'll have access to them on that disk. You can just put that disk in and access the scripts directory, and that will make this journey a lot easier. So here we go. This is my Workbench. I think I've got this set up to, well, it's an 030 ECS at the moment, and I think this is set up to maybe 8 colours. So this is my current configuration. So here we go. I've put it in creators, and you can see different creators in here: Backbone, Amiga Basic, Gamesmith, CanDo, Hollywood, Reality, Blitz Basic, and Grack and Grail as well. All these different demo makers and things like that. So we'll be checking a look at CanDo, checking that out. And this is a similar or more or less identical page to what you get once you install the package, only it's got the demos on there, which is something that I've created. So you can see that it comes with a number of directories, which are things which aren't really important at any stage, I've found, and I've put some extra directories on there as well with my demos on it. So the only important directory in here is the Workbench tools, and here you will find a relocator, which I've never actually needed to use, stop CanDo and shut down a deck. And this one is definitely important, because if you're running CanDo and it crashes or it goes into a while loop, you'll need to run this package, click on whatever it is and shut it down, and that means that you can get back to the browser. Otherwise the entire thing will lock up and you will have lost all your work. The binder changes all of the packages that you'll create in CanDo into an executable, and that either needs CanDo library or it doesn't. If you put that as bind to the browser, that will basically mean that it doesn't need the CanDo library. It's built in to whatever you've created, so it should mean it runs out of the box and you don't need to install it ever, because it's got its CanDo library built in. You can just run it straight out of the box. But sometimes if you want to install the CanDo library on the user's computer, sometimes you might needs CanDo library switched on, and that means that they'll pull the CanDo library out of the libs directory. So the deck binder is definitely important, and the multi-binder as well does pretty similar things to the deck binder, only it also adds any images, maybe sound effects as well, things that it can bind together. It'll bind them all into a single executable so that you don't have directories hanging off of it, loads of stuff hanging off of it. The downside, of course, of that is if you have 5 gigabytes worth of images that it imports, it will be a 5 gig file that you'll end up with. So I don't tend to use the multi-binder. And animes, all these things are for examples. None of these things are important to us at this stage. And well, CLI utilities, there's probably something in there. In fact, before we go on, what you'll end up with is something like this. Let's just bring up some kind of a package, and in here, this is what you'll end up with, some kind of a, well, it looks like a stack of cards because that's what it's meant to be, a stack of cards. So if we have a look at this and we check out the information, it says Deck Runner on there. That's the program that you'll need to use if you want to execute uncompiled things on your computer. If you've compiled them, then it doesn't need even Deck Runner, it should just run straight away. But Deck Runner on your computer will actually install in at least 1 or 2 variants, and I'd encourage people to get both variants installed onto their computer. So if we have a look at Deck Runner, there's one of them which doesn't require a library, which has everything built in, but that's huge and it's slow and it takes ages to do anything. And there's this Deck Runner here which presumes that you have got the library installed, CanDo, because you have installed CanDo, don't forget. So if you have installed CanDo on your hard drive, you just run this shorter, smaller Deck Runner. You can see it's only 324 bytes. And if you run that, let's see what it does. Couldn't find CanDo library. Well, it just complains if you haven't got the library, but if you've got CanDo installed, obviously you can run the smaller version of the Deck Runner. So that's definitely something to look out for. Make sure that you've got that installed in your C, and I don't think any of the other utilities that you find in here are any use. Anim to be anim, that's if you want to create an animation in the thing, which I've never actually successfully managed to do. There's Animation Manager, there's the Deck Runner that we've seen already, the Deck Runner without a library, so it does give you both of them. And the Deck Browser, not 100% what that does. Obviously the Deck Binder does the same thing that we've seen from the Workbench utility. It basically binds everything together, but you can run that from the CLI utility if you want to do that. Images, palettes, pointers, all of these are to do with the demo examples that come with the package, of which there will be in decks, and I've put in all of those, and some of those that I can find. There are quite a few example decks dotted around the internet, and quickies and all that kind of thing. A joystick example, mouse to sketch. I'm not sure if these will actually, well, yes it does actually, so let's see if it actually does anything. I'm not quite sure what it actually does do, but apparently you can use this to mouse to sketch, so no idea. That's a joystick example, and tutorials for CanDo 2. There's a database and a phone and a tutorial and things like that. So you do get them, and you also get a few things in Pro Pack 1 as well, including a solitaire game. So obviously you can create games in CanDo. It doesn't have to be utilities, it doesn't have to be anything. It could be literally anything that you can imagine it to be, you can create it. So that's the solitaire game, that's just an example. Code Buster, oh yeah, this is the Mastermind game. So start a new game, well, is it? Well, let's compare that. Well, 1 is right, so 1 is right, so maybe change that to, hold on. Well, I'm quite confused as to how to use the package. Here we go, this is it. And the green, let's try that. Well, it has changed it. I've still only got 1 right, which is confusing. So let's put the blue in. Now we've got 2 right and 1 in the wrong place. 2 in the right place and 1 in the wrong place, and 1 completely wrong. So, well, let's try that, and let's move this over here then. Now I've only got 2 right. So it was definitely that. And what else can we put here then? Well, there's only green left. Now I'm down to 1. So, alright then. Mastermind. Pretty good. And there's a shooter, and there's a CanDo game. There's a painter as well. Paint box. Of course you can create anything in CanDo, including a paint box. So, let's choose the tool line draw. And this one doesn't seem to have a colour picker on it. Clip, open, save, save as, grab a clip. So what? You can grab a clip. There's that. And stamp that down. So you can do everything that a paint package can do. You can draw those on the screen and do everything else with it. And so CanDo is very flexible. You can do all kinds of things with it. And so when you first run CanDo, this says 0.008 because I've just upgraded it with the upgrade on the Eminate. And perhaps the first thing that you want to do is to find the options. So let's find that first of all. If we can do, oh, config, there it is with a hand on there. So that's config. And from here you have to go through everything that you want to change. It standardises to the usual topaz 8, which is clear enough to read, but as you will see later on, when we're listing out huge listings on the page, maybe topaz 8 might be a bit big, so you might want to reduce that to a smaller font so you can pack more on the screen. But you can change all these different things in the package to whatever you like, and all the paths as well that the package uses. And this is one of the most important, interlace CanDo screen. And if you switch that off, the lister will be low res and huge font, and it will be only maybe 40 lines on the screen. That's really terrible. So if you put interlace on, it will be 80, I think, or at least something like that. And so that's an important option. And if you install the update 3.08, it will automatically take off the interlace mode. So you have to put it back on again if you install the 3.008 patch. So remember that if it comes up non-interlaced. Of course on a real Amiga it would be flickering. So on a real Amiga you probably want to switch the interlace off, and then you can actually read it. And that's very important. So the other things you can more or less leave those as stock, as far as I know. And the other 2 important things, apart from the interlace, are these 2 at the bottom. This gives you the order in which the options appear in the editor window and also on the main panel. So on the main panel you can see right at the bottom config CanDo, that's the last one. That's the one that we clicked on right at the bottom of the list. And on top of the list it's got a variable manager, buffer manager, text button, all these kinds of things. So you can use these buttons to move those up and down to the top and the bottom and all that. Even sort A to Z. And you can use even shortcut keys and things like that to actually reach those buttons without even clicking on them. You can define all that through these menus. And then in the editor, I've put the variables at the top, the buffers, the coordinates, the text, the picture, and all the ones that I don't need, such as the layout, the bookmarks, the ARX scripts, anim brushes, FX palettes. I'll put those right at the bottom so I can get to the important stuff. And everybody will have a different priority when it comes to these buttons, so definitely sort those out and save them, and then you'll get something like this. And again, I've put all the ones that I normally use on the top of the list, and the other ones, right mouse button, background anim, all that kind of stuff, ARX at the bottom, so we don't really need to access those. And so when you load up CanDo for the first time, you will find, unsurprisingly, a blank layout with a load of buttons. And one of the most important buttons that you discover is this one down here, which is Browse and Design. In browse mode, it means you can only interact with whatever you've got on the screen. In design mode, it means you can only interact with what is going on in CanDo. So you have to make sure you're in the right mode, and if you are struggling, if you hold down the right mouse button, you can see a number of options. We can load and save a deck, but only if we're in design mode. If we go into browse mode and press the right mouse button, well, sometimes it does work, but sometimes it defaults to the actual background, so you can't actually load and save. And that's strange because it defaults to the browser as soon as you load CanDo, so the first thing that you'll have to do every single time is click on design before you can get to the load and the save. Which is a quirk, you'll just get used to it. From here we can look at different cards as well, different modes which you won't really need to worry about because it's got design and browse on there. And super browse just means basically run the game without the editor. And usually with super browse you won't be able to get back to the editor, so I've never found a use for that. And the configuration we've just looked at already. And edit routines, I think that just goes into the routine editor. Yes it does, so there's really no point clicking on that when you've got the routines editor button over here. What else have we got? Dispose variables, flush variables, never really needed to use them, and help. So you can drag and drop the CanDo screen wherever you like, but I usually have it on the bottom because everything else will pop up onto the screen as it's needed. Apart from the direct utilities that you can see here that bring up a variables option, we can see all of the variables that you've got going on in your game or package, and all the buffers as well. Text input button, a button which we'll definitely need, documents button, the routines editor button which we'll definitely need, a timer button which you can put things on timers, that's brilliant. Object layer, I've never used that. The game port is where you configure your joystick to control whatever it is on the screen. Fields are for databases and for entering your name on the high score table. Right mouse button of course brings up the right mouse button, whatever that does. And in CanDo it doesn't have to bring down the pull down menu, it could make the screen explode into a million pieces. Whatever you want to configure the right mouse button, you can do it through there. And we seen that background down in the ARX bookmarks, useless. The disk just notifies useless error, never really found a use for that. With the error, basically this runs a script if ever there is an error with your package or game, and usually if there is an error then the error trapper will pop up first of all, and if it doesn't it will freeze and lock everything out. So the only thing that you need to put in this is exit script, which will exit anything that's running at the time, and hopefully it will return you back to the editor if there is a serious error or a crash with the utility. And so this is the fallback if there is a major error that isn't trapped by the error trapper, which it usually is, so you don't usually have to even bother with this. But you can make it print things and print error messages on the screen and print error inline whatever. If it comes up with the error you can program your own debugger and it will go to that if there is an error with your package. I just click cancel there, that means whatever I clicked is no longer there, it just gets rid of it. You have to click OK to save with this package. So that's, never click cancel after you've just put a page of text in, otherwise it's gone. The key inputs are where you change the key inputs for different things. You can hold down qualifiers to do different things. So for example, if you qualify as non-key escape sample keys, if I press enter there, qualifier is none, and we'll call that key input number 1. If I press the enter key, something will happen when I press the key down, and you can program it so that when it's released, so when you hold it down it does nothing, but when you release it, it does something, the enter key. Or if you keep pressing it, I think if you hold it down it does something else entirely. And you can have qualifiers like shift and control, not actually sure if that actually does anything, or whether you need to put a control value in there. It's not valid. Well, I'm not sure what the qualifiers are, but I've never needed to use that. But if you need to use the keys for any reason, then it definitely works, or it usually does. So I'm pressing the cursor keys at the moment. It's coming up with right, left, up and down, or at least it should do. And let's see what the keypad does. Number buttons, so you can program the keypad as well. And can I sample that? And accent. Can I sample the tab key? Yes, we can. And we know about escape. What about left alt? Alright, so that's the qualifier, left alt. So if you hold down left alt, it does something. And what was the control? Control. Okay. And does that? Yeah, right Amiga. So you can qualify it with anything. So if I hold down right Amiga and P, alright then, hold on. If I hold down, let's try that, right Amiga and P, then that means that whenever I press that, hold it down or lift it up or repeat it, it does something else. So you can program your keys using the key input method, separated to everything else. And bookmarks I've never used. Menu is where you program the menus. Of course, the pull down menus in the thing. It automatically says what it is, and you can even have a script so that whenever it is clicked on, and highlight is clicked on at the moment, you can change the highlight even as well. Let's complement the highlight, and then let's just create that as a sample button. So now when we browse, it comes up with the menu 1, menu item 1. When we let go of that, it will activate whatever we set up that as a script. In this case, we haven't added, well, we can add another one. We can edit the existing one, edit the name as well, menu 1. What happens if I double click on that? That's better. If you double click on certain things at work, menu item 1, so call that test item, and we'll call this, change that options. So there's even options for them. You can have the minimal items initially disabled, so it's off until you program it to be on again. You can have it as a check mark next to it, and the menu item is initially checked. So let's do that. Let's just see what that does. And get back to the browser, click on the thing, menu 1, test item. So now it's got a check mark next to it automatically, and you can check that on and off. So I've just changed that menu item into a check mark system, where you can have it automatically activate anything you want within the package, of course. And menu rend, before rendering menus, after moving menus. Okay, so this is a script that you can run of your own choice that it does something before and after removing the menus. So if you were programming battle chess, before the menus come on, you might want an angel flapping its wings left and right, that appears on the screen, and then it draws the menu, and then after removing the menu, the angels fly off left and right and the menu closes up. So you can do things even when opening and closing menus. Never need to use that, obviously. And the proportional gadget is something where you've got a scroll bar that rolls up and down the screen and does something depending on where that scroll bar is. So I think on this package you can only have a horizontal scroll bar, and once you program that in, it says right, draw scroll bar, right there it is, put a value on it, value limits. So let's have initial position 1, it's 1 of 10, knob size is 1, and it's called proportional 1. We can change that to anything we like. We can change the origin, we can change the size, change the knob to an image, we can change a script so that as soon as you change the position of that, it will do something else. Or you can have it a script so that when you release the button, it does something else. So That's what I've got at the moment. It's a proportional thing. So for example, if it was in that position and we release the button, it says, oh, you're in position 4. That means sound effects or volume or whatever it is this. If you release it there, then it says it's 8. Or you can have it in every position, tick tock, so it changes something on the fly. So that's basically a way to scroll through dates and times and things like that very quickly. You can just program this so it's a very thin slider and you can slide it wherever you want. Of course, you can change the design of the slider. It doesn't have to be that. You can program it to be an image if you want. And options, use the old 1.3 appearance. Oh, let's try that. The objects in this is disabled. Alright then, let's try that. Right, so now we're using the old Workbench 1.3. Wow, that's crazy. But yep, you can change the appearance, and I don't think that works, and I don't think that works. For some reason it's broken, so, but that definitely does. So at least that's something. Alt image, I think you can put an image on top of it or replace it, something like that. And the board, you can even change that, turn the board on and off, so that it does the same thing, only you can't see the board. So that comes in handy. Maybe if you're playing a game, you're manually moving something left and right, you can say, oh, now it's in that column, now it's in this column. But I've actually got that to look like a million other different things before now. It's just that right now I can't remember how I did it. So that's a proportional gadget anyway. Sound I don't bother about, and super duper mover and line gadget. So these are the only ones that you need to worry about. And just before we leave this section, right, well, these are important to remember. This, if you're designing something with more than one card in it, of which this is card 1 of 1, if you're designing something else, then you'll need to move forward and backwards in the cards. So right now, this is card 1, this is the card that it'll go to. If you want to add another one, you can call it card 2. And right now it's not doing anything, it's not activating anything when card 2 appears. And in card 2 we've got nothing. So if we use this mode, if we go back to card 1, it'll say, oh look, you've got a gadget on there. And if we go forward to card 2, it says, oh look, you haven't even put anything down in card 2 yet. That means you can put any number of buttons and gadgets and things dangling off anything, and you don't have to remove them or anything. You can just go backwards and forwards to different cards. At the moment you can see the cards has got a board on it, you don't have to have that. It's got a close option on it, you don't have to have that. And the title as well, you don't have to have any of that. So this is, we see the stack of cards, this is the card list. You can add and edit your cards from here, delete them, copy them as well. So if you've got everything all set up perfectly on one card, and well, the option is you could change it with code, or you could just change the background image and change things around and create a different card, and that will just redraw it all. The downside is, unless you use shared arguments and shared parameters, shared scripts, then they'll be relying on their own local scripts, and sometimes you want to share information between both cards. So we're seeing that a bit later on, just after I've gone through the final button. Finally, on this layout, this is where we change the name of everything, change the title of the window, so that unnamed will now change, the origin of the window, the size of the window. At the moment we're on our own independent window within CanDo, and this is a very important screen on the close button, which is if somebody presses that, it does something. By clicking on that, we can check that script out. It just quits the entire thing, quits the thing that you're working on, but it won't quit CanDo. So don't be fooled. If I go into browse mode now and click on that, it's not going to close anything down because we're still running CanDo. But if this was running independently, of course, and if I click that, then the whole thing will close down. But this green button is important because it tells the package where you want the screen. If we select the current screen, then that will put it on whatever screen it was on before. So you can have this current window, we're on I think page 1 at the moment, on as the next screen to whatever the one previously was, or you can have it on the Workbench screen. So let's have that on the Workbench screen. Now goes on to Workbench, and at the moment I don't think you can do much with it. You can't drag anything with it, you can't touch it, but it is there. That means that we've now put that entire thing on Workbench. And obviously by looking at this, let's change that to maybe 100. Let's change this one to screen width. Well, actually it's 600, so let's try 500 and change them. And the origin 0, 0. If we OK that, then that means you'll draw it over there. So, and then as you can see, the width and the height is important, particularly if you're on Workbench screen, because you can define that as whatever you want, and you can also change that on the fly within the package itself whilst you're running it, so you don't have to have it fixed. Everything's variable. So at the moment this gives it an origin, a starting block, something that it can use as an anchor, and then as soon as the package loads you can program this, whatever it is, to do whatever you want. Most people just create a blank screen without a border on it. So options and colours, is that right? No, it isn't, but anyway, you can change the colours. We're actually running for 6, 8, 10, 12, 4. We're actually using 16 colour mode at the moment in OCS, ECS mode, so it comes up with all the colours that are available, and it says after opening bring the window and its screen to the front. Definitely you want that on. After opening activate the window. Yep, you want that on. Open the window in the background. Well, not interested in that. For this, leave the window open until a new window opens. Yep. And you can change the background colour. So I think, yeah, you can just click on the colour you like. For example, black, and it will change it on here. Or you can click on these and do exactly the same thing. So what most people do is, well, we'll leave that as white for now. They create a blank. Oh, alright, then we'll leave it as black. A blank background. Click on OK, it'll do it. And then we're still getting there, so let's click on these options. Is this it? No, it isn't. Screen automatically scrolls with the mouse pointer. Well, if you've got that on this screen, it's not going to need to scroll anywhere. But if you've got it bigger than the screen area, which is entirely possible if you want to draw, for example, something off the screen, like bitmap or whatever it is, if you want to click that off, screen doesn't automatically scroll with the mouse pointer. It means you can have the screen as extended as you want in any direction. Draw things off the screen wherever you want in any direction, and the user won't know that you're doing it. So that's possible, but you need to make the screen that big in the first place, otherwise you won't be able to draw things off the screen. I know that doesn't make much sense, but CanDo can only use whatever the screen is. So if you make that screen bigger than the actual screen, you can use the extended area. If you don't, you can't. So screen is draggable. Definitely you want that switched on if you're in Workbench mode. If you're in its own screen, obviously you don't need that. Show screen's title bar. Well, let's turn that off. Draw screen's title bar and the gadgets. Well, let's switch that off. Initially open the screen behind other screens. We don't need that. Use interleaved bitmap if possible. We're not going to need to use any graphics, so that's that. And the palette, the pens, the font, the definition, the objects. This is another objects. So this is where we turn on and off the close button and the visible borders. So let's have a size button, the drag bar, the depth bar. Click on OK. That should get rid of the title, and it should, hold on a minute, what are we doing? Really nice on the screen. Let's put it back on the Workbench screen. Hopefully that does it. Right, that's good. Browse that. So now we've got a way to drag our new window around. We've got this, so you can minimize it, maximize it. You can also put it backwards and forwards. Close it with that button, and it's still printing the test on the top of the screen, but you can see you can add objects to it. Put that there, and let's have a look. Options, turn the boards on and off, turn the sliders on and off. Obviously if we turn everything off, what have you got? Well, you've got test, so it's still printing test on the screen. No idea why, but we can fix that. What we need to do, just get rid of it. We don't need a title. Why do you need a title? So now it's just blank. Good, so we've now got a blank box. We can't do much with it, but we've still got hopefully the dragger on there. Let's just see. Well, maybe not. Maybe I've turned the drag off. I think I've just turned it off, didn't I? So we now got a blank box on the screen. That's now on the Workbench screen. We can have it on its own public screen if we like, and that will list the public screens that are actually active. This example, we haven't actually got anything listed, and it looks like we can't pull that to the back either. Can we launch anything on its own screen, I wonder? Well, if we launch anything on its own screen, let's put it that way, it will mean, no, these just open in basic, it will mean that we can open that on whatever screen that we like. So screen is draggable, drag bar. Alright, and so I can't do it with that board anyway, so I can't show you that, but if you've got a different screen open, you can just define it, and if it's on its own custom screen, which is the usual thing, then it will come up with whatever you define it as, and you can see the mouse pointer disappears because we've only defined that screen in a certain window. So it starts in a certain position and it goes all the way over to a certain position, and then it goes to there and up and back again. So we've defined the screen, but it's not full screen area. That's a bit pathetic, but we can make it full screen area, or at least we can redefine that size, and we can put a border on it, or we can set the border off. So that's that. We can also define, if it's on its own custom screen, we can define it, so we can have it, you know, whatever you like, high res, medium res, low res. If you want that in ham mode or ham laced mode, just like that, we can have 4096 colours on there. And what that will do is it will change everything now into ham mode. You can't see anything because I've switched everything off. So if I put on the border and something like that, then it puts the border back on. And if I change the title to title, we can now see that title is that. So anyway, that is ham mode. I know it doesn't look like it, but it is. What else have we got? Well, again, low mode. If you want 64 colour half bright, you can have that, but for the same thing you could have ham mode and exactly the same screen size. So that's what you can do. You can have ham mode. We're not running AG at the moment, so we haven't got anything fancy on here. This is just a stock ECS machine, so we can have ham mode list, which is very fancy. I like that one. I think that's the one that I made my Crisis demo in. We can also have high res list, high res, high res, high res list. And so if we go into this one, half bright list, click on this, click on that, that will then, you can see the title's changed, the border's changed, everything else is changed. This is a different screen mode entirely. So you don't have to have whatever is usual, you can have anything you like. But sometimes this PAL high res list, which is the one that I like, is 16 colours. This is the one that I used to create my battle game. Maximum screen size, maximum interlaced, maximum colours. When you click on that and put it on OK, it usually, oh well, it's actually done it this time. It usually complains, but it's actually done it. You can see how high res that is now. A nice high res border, a nice high res title. So that's nice, isn't it? And that coincidentally is probably the same as I've got my Workbench on at the moment. And I can't drag it down to have a look at my Workbench because I've turned that off. But you can see it's now in high res mode. and I've never actually got it successfully going to super high res mode. I mean, we're going to check it out anyway, but I've never actually managed to get it in there. No, it's just defaulted back to low res again. You can see that it's bigger than the screen area because the board is gone, but I can't display it. It's defaulted back, so we can't do that. But that was interesting. I like the fact that high res mode is working. It's only 16 colours, but we can use it, so let's use that. I love it. And so we can have size based on the fields or size based on the background image, and of course you'll have to load in a background image. It says what image you want to load. You can load any picture you want in the background. So if it's the battle, let's just load up something in particular, the pictures. What about the maps? What about this one? So I can now have it based on this picture. The image is this, the screen size will be this based on that picture, the palette will be based on that picture as well. So if I click on OK, that picture will now load up on the screen. We've got a stop button, a start button, the enemy, the Britons, and a surrender button, and we've got a general landscape of somewhere where you're supposed to attack it. So you can see the screen is in screen mode. It is displaying full screen. You don't have to have the title on it. Let's see what one looks like. You can turn off the title and the border and everything else. That's another one. That's an overhead map of a battle for my battle game. So you can that's deck open, I don't need to do that. You can have any image that you like in the background, but usually the one that I would recommend above all others is to have a blank black background, which is the number of colours on it which you intend to use for your game. High res black one. So this has got mostly a green palette at the moment, and that's useless for what I want to do. But if we load up this, hopefully, there we go, and now it's just blank, but it has got colours, and to see those colours one way is to go into our routines editor, which is something that you'll be getting used to massively because this is the heart of the program. In our routines editor we can now change things. What would we like to change? Well, the first thing to remember that we're supposed to be doing is to look at paint. So click on that and it's got now listed our whatever our palette is chosen to be. In this case I have chosen a different palette than the standard Workbench because of course number 0 there, that would be grey, number 1 would be black, that's number 1, number 2 would be white, and number 3 would be blue. So this is a non-standard palette that we're using at the moment, based on an image that I created in Paint, flood filled it all in black, defined the palette that I like, and now it'll come up with that. But the picture that you put on top of that will use that palette, unless you switch it to use its own palette, which is a bit confusing, but maybe we can take a look at that. Whilst we're here, we can also draw things on the screen, whatever we like. So let's choose something to draw on the screen, and let's change it to this. This is a rhomboid, so it's going to be there, and a triangle. It looks like my palette has disappeared off the screen. Sometimes it can do that in CanDo, but we've also got this one at the bottom. I'm pressing, what is that, right Amiga and M. That takes us back to Workbench, it takes us back to CanDo, and it toggles the window as well. So it's right Amiga, M for mother. But yeah, we have got this down here as well if the palette decides to disappear. So now a triangle. How do I define a triangle? What's it doing? It's just drawing a line at the moment. Maybe if I hold it down and then release it. Okay, that's not too bad. and dotted lines and single lines, flood fill, do all that business, draw things from here. You can even put trails on and off, you can clear it, reverse, I'm not quite sure what that is, but once you've finished drawing stuff on the screen you can insert that. What that will do is it will just put that into a routine. You can see it's going into draw mode, which is jam 1. It sets the pen colour from 1 to 16 in this case, it's going to number 5, draws a circle, that's the X starting point, X is a cross, don't forget, because X is literally a cross, X, cross, so X is a cross, and then Y is down, that means it's 130 pixels across from one side and 121 down from the top. Also means it's 48 in size, pixels, width in radius, I think. So then it changes to pen 13 of 16, it then draws a poly, and it fills that in, it then draws another polygon, 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 and then it basically draws that on the screen. You'll notice that it's cleared at the moment, it always does that. But if you want to run a routine, there's two things you can do. You go into Tools and Perform Script. That'll perform it, and then whatever that script does, it will then appear on the screen. Or, if you don't want to do that, you can hold down the right Amiga button and press the number 3 key, and that will, well, if you press the 3 key, it'll come up with a list of possible commands that you can use, which is very handy. But if you press the 4 key, the right Amiga button and 4, you definitely need to get used to that. And it says, are you sure you want to perform this task? You can click on yes, or hopefully I can press enter, and it will perform it and do exactly the same thing. So, as I said, the only other thing that you'll need to think about in this bit is number 1, perform the script, which is A and 4, and also the lexicon assistant, which is right Amiga and 3. Everything else you can ignore it. The verify script will automatically work every time you press the OK button, so you don't need that. The routines, we're already in routines. Print, you don't need. Clear window, refresh window. Well, I never used them, I just run the thing again. So, calculator I've never used, events I've never used. So the lexicon assistant tells you all of the commands and things that you can use within CanDo, of which there are a lot. Hundreds, in fact. So if you wanted to draw something on the screen, you would put hash and then the question mark draw and then hash question mark, and then that will list out all the commands for drawing. So I can draw border, I can draw a circle, draw an ellipse, draw a line, draw polygon, that's what we've already used, x1, x2, x1, whatever, up to 6 sides, draw a rectangle, and draw 2, so wherever your last point of reference was, if it was this point, you could then draw 2 xy and it will draw up here, draw 2 something else and it will draw here as a continuous line. Set area draw mode flags, I'm not quite sure what that does. Set draw mode draw flags, I think that's jam 1 and jam 2, and I'm not quite sure what they do, but the program will put those in anyway, so if you forget about the jams, don't worry about it. String equals the draw mode, so whatever draw mode you're in, it can even save that as a string and tell you and remember what that is. So if we wanted to enter something else, no matter what it is, variable, so we can load a variable, save a variable. What is a variable? Well, a variable is just something in memory, usually a numeric line like a value, or an alphabetical alphanumeric line like some text. So basically that means load some text or a value, and you can also save it as well into a file. And so variable, what else can we do? Well, we can do anything. If we want to print something, print screen, whatever screen area it is, print the text that actually prints text on the screen, print window, set print font, set print style. So if we wanted to, well, we can also do that with a button as well. So let's look at fonts. There's also a text button here that does it all for us. So if we set our font first of all, it will then take ages to load up all the fonts that we've got in our fonts directory. Once it's bothered to do that, we've got all the ones that we've got, tons of them. If you want colour fonts, it will handle colour fonts, but the palette depends on what the palette is set to already. If you want to change the colour fonts so it uses the actual colour of the colour font, you're going to have to find that and change the palette separately so that actually works. So yes, colour fonts do work, and ordinary bitmaps work as well. And that's a nice script. We're running high res at the moment. You might think, oh, that's really nice small font, but we're running high res. If we put, does that work? 18? Yes, it will try to rescale the font. Let's try 25. It will try 215 to 30, so it should double it. What about 130? Yeah, so it will try and scale whatever, even if the font doesn't even exist. It will try and scale it down, but it'll only go down so far before it becomes unreadable. 8, 9, so with this one probably 13, no, 14, 15. So yeah, it's not going to get any lower than that. With this particular one, some of them are already small. 6, 11. You can see one of them is italicized and one isn't. And so we can make that 110, and if we just scale it up, and usually about maybe in high res mode, well, scale it up. Some of them are already nice and big, like this Roman font is already nice and big at 16. So if we move that up to, well, sometimes it distorts, obviously, because these aren't perfectly built into the package. So you can't always guarantee that the font that you're going to get is going to be good. But sometimes there is a huge, great big font in here that we can use. And it looks like we've only got the small ones. Okay, so that goes all the way down to 5. To 8, and then that's completely different. I've no idea why. Small font, player font, Steven font, ST font. Anyway, so once you've chosen whatever font you want, whatever text that you want, whatever size, whatever colour that you want, you can change whatever colour you want by holding down or clicking on whatever these colours. And sometimes, I'm not saying every time, but sometimes you can even add things to it. Bold, italic, underline. So well, I've just changed it for some reason. It's fallen off the one that I wanted. But anyway, it's the text. Let's see if we can find anything else. Strange fonts that don't seem to be doing much at the moment. You can see we can bold it, italicize it, underline it as well. When we click on, well, background font, let's see if that changes anything. I don't think it does it? No. The background in this case doesn't. But anyway, the position, let's put it here, and then OK, and then let's see. So we can run that, remember, Amiga, right Amiga, and 4. And that will draw it on the screen, the text. And so I've set the print font, in this case it's symbol 10. Of course, if I want to change that to 40, just does it. Should do plain 2 1. Well, it should do anyway. Symbol. Set print font. Alright then, maybe that's a different thing. Set print font plain 2 1. Set pen. Well, it looks like it's not. I think that's some kind of padding or something like that. It's not actually doing anything. So I wonder what that is. 3 1. It's not actually doing anything either. But anyway, let's set it to plain, and let's set it to that, and set the text to whatever it is. So can I set print size? Does that work? No, it doesn't. If it doesn't work, what will happen is, when you can turn it on and off, the package will scream and say, no, that's not going to work. So we can set print style, set print font, window. So it doesn't look like we can set print size through there, but of course we can just do it through here. Size 39, alright then, 49. Does that work? Yes it does. Italic. We can even italicize colour fonts. And the text colour, I don't think that does anything. No. So let's put that in. Let's select position here. Okay. Let's run that. Let's see what that does, and that puts it in. So you can see that laying things out so far, we've painted it directly onto the screen. We've put text onto the screen, and of course we can put a picture onto the screen as well if we want to do that. So let's just draw a picture, and so it'll draw a picture now, and then, well, if I run that, it probably, well, it has defaulted to the picture because we're setting picture, so it's now defaulted the palette to the picture palette. You can see the colour font palette's now changed. You can see the picture palette is how it's supposed to look, and again you can see it's got rid of the bar on the bottom, and that usually means, or it used to mean, panic mode, because oh no, I can't do anything, oh no, everything's gone badly, oh no. So if you press the left Amiga and M, that will take us back. You can see that this has disappeared, and it's appeared on the Workbench screen. This is a bug in the package, but if you change to force that to go to the back, and you go to the back, hopefully both the window and CanDo will be on the same screen together. So that's definitely one to remember. Left Amiga, M for mother. You'll need to remember it. So now it draws that, changes the palette to that, and then it puts this on. It will automatically draw this stuff, but because the picture's over the top of it, it won't. Well, it'll just go over the top of it, and then it'll print. So it's still doing things in order, but because this text is above the picture, obviously, that means that that's the only thing that shows up. But if I change this to show brush, well, I think it's already changed the palette. Show brush, let's put that coordinate 0, 0. Yep, still drawing everything, it's still changing the palette. Anyway. Yeah, now it's drawing all over the top of everything. So you can see we can put a picture in the background at any stage, or we can put a brush in at any stage as well. So if the brush is smaller than the picture, we can simply show a brush, and so we can type show brush, and then to make things easier there's actually a file requester. So let's click on that. What do I want to show? Well, let's click on battle. Let's get an idea of something. Wood brush, that'll do, wood brush. So now we're showing that brush files, whatever that is. That's obviously the direct absolute path. This is the relative path relative to CanDo, and this is the absolute path. And if you have this on your computer, it will try to find that picture, but as soon as you try to export it and run it on another computer, it won't. So that is unless you set up CanDo demos, battle, whatever it is. And in my case I've set it up so it's simply battle. So if I'm going to battle, which is the directory that my game's in, picks and wood brush, it'll pick it up from there and it'll display it from there because I've got it assigned. At the moment I haven't got anything assigned, unfortunately, so I'm going to have to use this because I've at least assigned CanDo. So if I run that, it's going to complain because I haven't set an origin. So let's set it to maybe 150 across and 150 down. There was a problem forming the script. Object is not found. We're still struggling to find the object. CanDo demos battle. So that's the relative path. And now, hopefully, again, it's drawn it on the wrong screen. But there it is, that's the wood brush. That's printed 150 across, which is about here, 150 down, which is about here, and then it displays it. So, move that up. So obviously, if I want to change that so it's only 50 across, change that. If it's 1 across, change that. And you can see it's printing itself over itself. So if I now do 90, do that, that will then duplicate itself, print it down there. If I change that to 40 or 10, that will then print that exact same brush over the top, and then we'll now move it somewhere else. You might wonder why. It's because we're using the same routine all over itself and we're not clearing anything. So it will print the brush on the screen however many times you like. Once it's in the buffer, it will print it on the screen however many times you like a blitter. So we can check the buffers by checking the buffers. At the moment we've got CanDo battle picks, and we can't actually see the name, but one of those is this Ebroken map that we've got in the background at the moment. This one is, I think, the high res black picture. Show picture, I don't think that works. No, all that does is basically, yeah, the high res black pictures. That'll simply insert that into the editor. So you can do it like that. We've also got map 1, that was the battle map that we loaded up earlier on, and another one, and something else. So we can clip part of this window, we can clip all of it, we can flush the buffer completely and get rid of it. So let's flush that buffer. Flush CanDo battle picks wood brush. So that gets rid of it, and then that shows it again, gets rid of it. So I don't really need to flush that. That comes in handy if you're getting rid of something on the fly. Otherwise you can just do flush all. So if I put flush all there, if I can spell it right, that will automatically flush everything in the buffer. So now when I look at it, the only thing in the buffer is this wood brush, and that's because that's the only thing I'm loading up in this routine, the wood brush. The Ebroken brush we're not loading, and we haven't loaded, so by flushing all you can get rid of everything in the memory and then print everything on it, and then when you go somewhere else you flush it again. That means the memory footprint of whatever you're using isn't multiplied every time you put a background, high-res background image on it. What happens is you flush it, or you flush it individually, and that means you can keep the memory footprint nice and small. So you've seen the buffers hold the buffers, not just the picture buffers, but also the sound, the audio, music buffers, anything else that isn't a variable. And the variables, again, are in here. We haven't defined any variables just yet. So let's define a variable. Let variable, you can call it anything you like, 1 equals, and if it's text, then it's gonna have to go into quotes. Okay, let day equal 1, and if it's a number you don't need quotes. Let cycle equals ready. Now those variable names are just random, doesn't matter what they are. But if I run that now, right at the bottom of our script, we're letting variable 1 be called that. You can see it's still got the quotes around it. Day 1, day equals 1, and ready is cycle. That's just whatever. It doesn't really matter. So if I want to, I could print text cycle, and if I want to, you can use the coordinates, and I'll say, where do you want to put it? Alright, then I want to put it here. Print text cycle, and it'll do it using the font that was last set, so that's tile. Don't know how this is going to look, but that's because it's not in uppercase. Alright then. EAD, looks like this font itself is a bit knackered. It only works in uppercase. There it is, ready. So that basically means that we can assign something somewhere else, any text you want, any character you want, and by printing text, in this case the cycle variable, wherever you want it, it will then print that text on the screen wherever you want it. Obviously, if you want to loop that, you can put that in a while loop. So, for example, if you want to say while day is less than 10, while the day is less than 10, let's tab it out, print cycle. Alright, okay then, let gap equal, let's see, 20. No, we'll call it 10, just so we can see the effect of that. So we're printing out the thing on the screen, X is across, and for Y we're going to call that gap. So now we want gap to equal whatever gap is plus 10. And we want day to be whatever day is, let day plus 1. And loop. And loop. Okay, so that then counts up. And also, while we're here, let day equals day plus 1. While day is less than 10, so that prints that cycle, whatever cycle is, 10 times. So let's change that to Amiga. And it'll print that down the screen. 90x gap 10 from the top. End loop. Okay, alright. So if day equals 10, let day equal 1 again. So that it basically resets what we've just done. And let gap equals 10. Now we don't have to do that because we're resetting the variables before we're running the while loop. So it's setting them up, but once we've run the while loop, then these variables are going to be different. So all I'm doing is running that. It prints it down the screen, blah, 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 Amiga 10 times. Let's change that so that it's 30. And so now do Amiga, and so it does that in that font, it runs a while loop, and then at the end of it, it stops. And then at the end, it resets the variables, so if we're running anything else, if day equals 10, what day are we on? Oh, we're on day 30. Alright, so if day is above 10, anything above 10, if it equals 10 or if it's above 10. So once it's finished that, okay, so that now resets it. Day 1, day 10. Variable 1 is still that, the cycle is still Amiga. And so it's printing cycle out. I can change cycle, I can change the font size, the font whatever within the while loop, change the name of whatever it is. So that's how to print graphics on the screen, and also things like that. But we can also, once we can put a button on the screen, and the buttons is slightly different. So we'll leave the routine behind just for a second. And the buttons are, well, you can access the same buffer screen from here that you saw in the other window. Of course, we've already got the wood brush in there, so that comes in handy. The same variables requester as well. You can see what variables we've got from the main screen. Text as well, we can put that on. And a document, well, we can click on document. It says, alright then, well, where do you want it? Well, okay then, let's define a document there. And editable or a view only or a list. Let's do view only, and the document has to be a text file, so we can load up Crisis. That's got a text folder in there, and that's got a document on there. Let's try easy. And view only, I'll click, change the font of that document. Let's change it to Topaz 8, but let's change the colour in this case to nice red, and click on OK. That's font. We can have the scroll bar, we can have a border on it, call it document 1 for now. On click it does absolutely nothing, so let's click that, and that puts on the document. Let's see what it actually does. Well done, Maggot, you beat the easy level. So now it prints documents on the screen. We can use the scroll bars if it's quite a long document to move that around. We can also move the document around itself, and that will automatically change the parameters within the document. If we double click it, you can see the size, the origin, height and the weight, stuff like that. And if we change them, you can see that automatically changes those numbers. So if I want to make that document nice and wide so it shows more of that text, it's all on one line at the moment, so that's why it's only showing one line of text on the screen. But you see, okay, time to stop sucking on your diaper and your dummy. That's the message for my game. So you can put a document on the screen, you can scroll around it with the arrows, and if we go into browse mode instead of design, click on that, then that will work, but the document is actually a bit small at the moment, we can't do that. What else can we do? We can put a button on, and a button, it will say, oh, where do you want to put it then? Well, let's put one about here, and button 1, we can change the name of this button to whatever we like, and that will be important, definitely important later on. So we'll call that test button for now, and you can change the button so it's an image. You don't have to have it as the button itself, you can have it as an image. You can change the font as well. So let's have it as Topaz 8 font, and we'll do nice yellow button, nice yellow colour. Change the colour of course, let's have it as blue. And again, origin needs to be set, size needs to be set, and the button size is the text size or custom, so you don't have to have it as the text size, you can have it as custom if you like. At the moment it's down there, and you can even set it up as a shape as well. Whatever happens when you click on that button happens when you do that. If you drag the button it'll do that, if you double click it, and if you release it. You can have a border on the button as well. Let's change the border, so you can change the border to, as I like to say, whatever you like, and even no border, embossed border, embossed heavy, and you can change the colours on them to the ones that are available. So let's just have that in the particular colour part. I'll put that on test button. That's a very psychedelic test button, and it will default to that size because of the font that we've used and the font size of the font. But if we change this, let's change it so it's 200 across, height at least 23 will do. That will then rejig everything about, and now the borders, well, I've gone into browse mode. If we go into design, We can now put that button wherever we like. Let's put it here, and I'll draw it there. So whatever happens when we press that button, it'll do something. The one highlight is on. And if we go into design mode, all we need to do is to double click, remember, that will automatically edit it. We can put some kind of a label on there, something like that. Not quite sure how that works. I've never actually tried it. So you can label your buttons, so there's no excuse for unlabeled buttons anymore. You can simply label them wherever you like. Example label, highlight pen. No idea. Let's see what it does. It's printed that in a different colour, so you can label your buttons. And buttons are important because they can do anything. And so on this one, when I click this button, what do I want it to do? Well, I can run a routine, but in this case, let's make it go to a different card. I think this is still, are we on card 1 or card 2? I don't know. Let's insert a go to card 1, and let's see. Okay, check mark, no idea. Let's just change the button type. Clicks on that by mistake. So now browse, let's see what it does. And now it goes to page 1, which is the one with, if you remember, this on it. So this is our title screen, and we can't get back. Look, we're lost, we can't get back, so you have to press it left Amiga M, and you might have to move that back, and you might have to move that back. Right, okay, so now we're back. And of course we can move backwards and forwards using the navigation buttons. That goes to the end of all of the windows, that goes to the very start, that moves backwards and forwards, or you can select the card which you want to go to, and this button now goes back to card 1. But you can have buttons do anything. You can also have a timer do anything as well. So let's have a quick look at the timers, and I'm just going to have to take a quick drink. So this is timer 1. Let's call this clock timer so that we know what it is. And this object is initially attached and active, so that every time we go to this window, this particular window, window 2 I think it is, this timer will automatically start and be active. You can have it as a one-shot timer or as a recurring timer. And so one-shot timer, in this case if the timer reaches 1 minute, it will do something once. But if we have it as a recurring timer, we put that on as maybe, let's call it 10 jiffies, then every 10 jiffies, which is a fraction of a second, something will happen. Or so you can have it as a daily timer as well. You can set whatever day of the week it is, whatever hour of the day is, whatever it is. But for this timer, I'm just going to put it on for 10 to activate something every 10 jiffies. So what do we want the clock timer to do? Well, we can say let clock display equals time, because this package will memorize the time and the date for us, and also a few other things like the relative position of the mouse as well, as mouse X and mouse Y. So if you want to find out what mouse X is and mouse Y, in fact let's try that. Let pos X equals mouse X, let position Y equals, and you don't have to space it out, mouse Y, but you do have to spell it correctly obviously. So what we're doing, we're updating the variable clock display with the time, and we're letting mouse X, whatever it is at the moment, be put into pos X and pos Y. So now we can print text. Well, let's what volume? Well, I'm presuming. I still think set print font. Print font is a good idea, and then we can print text. What have we got? The display, clock, display, and we can put that. Let's put it in the corner like a clock. Alright, well, I can't put it in the border. Let's put it there then. Clock display, and let's set pen as, what have we got on here? What's white? 15. 15. So I'll change to that and put it in 15, and it'll print the clock display there, hopefully. But it would also, well, let's set pen to something else. Let's try 8, and let's print position X of the mouse pointer, something like here, and let's print text position Y, something like there, and let's change that to 47 so they match. Okay, so that's our script. So every time we run the thing now, it'll run that script. Let's see if it does anything. And there it is. Well, that's quite good, but not quite as much as I wanted it to. So, oh, we're now gone into the routines editor. So you can set the script up on a timer, if you like. Script timer, you see, that's another problem. It automatically generates a new timer every time you click on the timer button. To avoid that, you have to click on edit. You might notice add, edit, copy and delete. And so if you want to delete anything, if you don't want to delete that and click on delete, it'll get rid of it. Delete that button, click on delete, it'll get rid of it. So we can delete, we can copy as well, but if you click on edit, that means you can edit an existing button, which is very handy because it gives you all the list of the buttons that are there. If you click on edit, it also means, paramountly, you can also edit the timers, and it'll give you a list of the existing timers. Double click on them, and list is occurred. Now it's very bad, I actually say, bad form to type something directly into this window. It will actually do it very quickly if you do it in this window. But what I usually do is to make that into its own routine. What do you do? Well, with this, it's got various things on the top, and for this we need to look at cut and paste. If we look at this, let's put it on 0, 0, we can mark the current location, we can then put it to the end, and we can cut that out, cut those lines. What that will do is get rid of everything, and instead we'll do something else. So let's just do let's do the clock. Okay, so now the only thing that activates in that occurred routine is clock. That's the only thing it's going to do. It doesn't have to do anything else. But now we're going to have to define a routine. We can add a new routine. For this, we can either call it a global routine, which affects all of the cards in all of the decks, which is usually recommended, or we can have a nice local routine which only affects this particular card. So, well, let's just do that. And I think I called it clock. So let's just define clock. And let's now paste all those lines back into it. So now we've got a clock. But what I want to do is, now that we've defined everything, we're printing the clock display out there. That's good. But what I want to do is I want to put a black box over. Come on, come on, come on, Come on, I know you want to do it. I know you want to do it. I know you want to do it. So we're going to put a black box over that. And over that. And you know what, over that as well. So it will then insert all those black boxes. It will then display everything that we've got going on. So let's try that again. Clock. So if I click on this, it will now do the clock. Unfortunately, well, it's doing one thing, but it's not doing another. Unfortunately, I forgot. See, now that we've changed the clock into its own routine, we can now go into the routines to edit the clock instead of the timer. And that's a lot easier. But you'll notice that we've set pen to 0. We've then drawn all these rectangles and then tried to do the clock. So let's set the pen back to whatever I had it on before. I think it's 15, isn't it? I can also press the left Amiga and K. That'll get rid of that line. So you'll need to know some kind of shortcut keys. Maybe they're already listed here. Yeah, delete line, Amiga K. So anyway, it now sets it to top, it then sets the pen and then draws it. That's good. So that means that that clock routine now works. If I click on browse, it will now print every 10 jiffies. You can see it's flickering a little bit. Every 10 jiffies it'll print the clock in the top corner. It'll then print the current position of our mouse pointer, X, over here, and then it'll print Y over here. So if I put it to the top, then Y is 0, X is 0. So that means in real time it will update, and once it's done that, it will draw a blank box over it so that we don't have any leak from all this stuff overlapping on top of each other. And it will draw a blank box over that and over this, and then it'll print it all over again. Hence the flashing. And you don't have to, you can see it's updating quite quickly. You don't have to do that. If we look at the timer and edit that clock timer again, we're still in edit mode. So instead of every 10 jiffies, do you know what? We can have that set as a second. And then it literally only updates once a second. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that now updates 1 second, but it means at least we can put the time on the screen. And there are also different things we can do, but you can see that with a timer you can do all kinds of things. You can make things appear on the screen, move around on the screen itself disappear. We can check for a checkbox as well at this point, because we can make hitbox here or somewhere around the top. So you can say if current X position, X is above 10 and it's below 20, and the current Y position is above 16 and it's below 20, then we must be in this box here. So that can highlight a button, it can highlight a box, it can make something happen, it can trigger something. So we can make actual hitboxes using the timer. So let's change that just to 1 jiffy, and let's see what else we can do. Clock, let's add another one just to this local card, and let's just call that a test. Well, text will do. And now we can start a new routine, something else that happens on top of everything else happening that we've got going on already. You can make anything that you like go on. Again, if you click on the commands list and just browse all those, you adjust the volume, you can draw areas, you can ask for responses, assign functions, list the available memory, because the available memory is also already pre-built variable. You can play music, you can play sound effects, clear the window, current song tempo, current song type, current song name. You can create a brush, you can clip things out, you can draw regions, you can create error codes, error messages, you can evaluate things, flood, fill, change a border, create a border, create database, import database objects, and format values. You can get proportional values from that proportional thing we set up on the first page. You can create icons, you can change high res, you can set end loop values, you can insert any buffer name of anything in description, and so on. So it's just a good idea to just go through these one by one, find out what they do, and it gives you a quick example. Like refresh object, one of these is the timer, so you can have refresh object and you can set the timer as the object, and that will refresh that every second instead of it relying on the timer. You can create masks as well and set a transparency colour for brushes that you've got going on. You can do all kinds of things, set the screen width, set the palette, things like that. And on that disk that I mentioned earlier on, you might notice that it has some scripts in there as well, and those scripts will virtually be, if I can click on it, the ones that I've got listed in here. And the scripts, well, there are quite a few of them. All these are mine that I've got going on. So what can we have? Zoom out, pics, version set patch. That's for the DOS commands, that's for the timers, timer color bars, timer analog clock, manual clock. What does that do? Time equals time. Okay, so that's the manual clock, so we can clear that. That was for my rally game. That's not really gonna help as much. Time from system, that's probably it. Okay, so on this one it sets up a variable, it calls it time1 and it gets the time from that, and that's this over here. It then sets up another variable, gets some more characters, and it takes the characters from whatever time 1 is. So it says get characters from time 1, so it should say that, and then it moves to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 for some reason, and 2. Looks like it's getting the last 2 characters, 7 and 2, but anyway, it's supposed to. Let's see if I can run that. The time is 33:33. Time 2 and time 3. 33? I don't understand why it's doing that. Let's have a look at the variables. 33. Alright, yeah, so it's getting the last one twice. So that's supposed to say, get rid of that. Well, the seconds don't really matter, do they? So let's go to position 1 and get 2. Let's go to position 1, 2, 3, 4 and get 2. Let's try that. Ooh. 33. Well, it's supposed to. Time 2 and time 3. Time 2 is 21, times 3 is 18. So that's right, isn't it? Times 2 and times 3. So this is how you print variables. Time is, and then you have to do these lines. Actually, I'm just gonna get rid of 2 of them. So time is whatever it is, you have to put it in quotation marks, and then 2 lines, and then whatever it is, in this case it's time 2, and then 2 more lines, and then semicolon. So you could change that to that perhaps, and then there's a few more lines. It puts time 3 and it puts in a 20 across and 20 down. So anyway, text, get the time. It's because they were running that as well. Time 1 is the time. Text. Anyway, so if we now use the clock routine and call in do text, it's probably actually I'm gonna have to, because that's updating itself, isn't it? I'm probably gonna have to draw in a blank background just so that it's not messing me over. So let's insert that. Set pen 0, set pen 4, so that should be alright. Let's see what that does. So I'm just trying to give you an idea of timers and what actually things do. So you can see that now that I've got it set to 1 jiffy, this updates itself instantly. There's no lag. The XY is always on the screen, instant, no lag. And the actual clock itself only updates itself every second. But it looks like it's not updating itself quick enough with the rasters to maintain an image on the screen. But you see the time is 21:21. Actually it is. It's 21 minutes 21 seconds past 9 PM. So that is actually the correct time, 21:21. So anyway, that now updates, and if we do edit this timer so that it's, let's say, pretend. So you can do timers to do whatever you like. And now it prints it on there. Again, it gives it enough time now to refresh itself every so often. So it's not as quick as it was before. And because this isn't changing, it doesn't need to change. So we've got a thing set up. And don't forget, if you want to change this so that it runs on, say, Workbench, click on that. Let's see what it does. Now it works on Workbench. Let's change it so that the width is a bit narrower. No. Let's try that. And now, well, the width of the page is still defaulting. It looks like it's because we've got this battle image going on. So it would be, wouldn't it? I'm not sure how to get rid of that actually, but that will put that battle image in the background of Workbench. We're not defined. So how do we get rid of that image? Based on image, based on fields, that should do it. And if I change that field to 576, then it will now do it, you see. And if I browse, so that it's still doing the clock, but it's off the edge of the screen, still doing our coordinates wherever it is on the screen, all the way to the bottom of it, left and right, still all works. And we've got a replacement clock going on as well, which is updating itself, or at least it would do if the screen itself was wide enough. Of course, all we need to do, now that we've got our clock routine, is to put it somewhere else. So if we change that to, let's say 458, let's change 450, then it can do that. We can also turn the title off if we want to do that, and the visible border. So now our tool comes on. We've got a replacement clock, we've got the coordinates. It's now 24 minutes past 9. And if we wanted to, we can have this up here in this top corner. You can see my workbench has already got a clock on it. I could put that in that top corner anyway. I can have anything I want going on on Workbench. I can print whatever I want. I can print a document. I can have whatever buttons I want. You can see that button takes me back to its own custom screen, which it was set to before. It moves it off Workbench, and then as I move it back to screen 2, it moves it back to Workbench again. So, and do we have, no, we don't have the pull down menu on this one because we haven't defined it, but on this one we have defined it. So that's a basic overview of some of the functions of CanDo. You can draw things, do things like that, and the clock, so it's displaying that routine 1. That's drawing, well, let's get rid of the wood brush. Routine 1 clock. So all clock's doing is that. So let's do routine 1, and then do the clock functions, and then do text. And it'll do routine 1 and draw all that stuff every time. Yeah, and it draws it on. Ooh, every time. Gets the next one, draws it on every time. So you can do animations just by using the timer function, and you can have any number of timers listed. Of course, the more things you've got going on, the more complex things are, the more time it's going to take between doing each task. So it's now drawing all that stuff every time, and by clicking on design again it should automatically stop it. So you know about your variables, your buffers, your text, your buttons, your document, your routines and your timers. The only other thing is the game port. And if you're making a game, you can make it so that it's a Twitch type game where your input has tons and tons of repeated moves left and right, or you can make it a precise game. I don't know why precise shows twitching on there, but this is precise, so that if you move the joystick once in any direction it'll work. And this means you can move it up, down, left and right, or you can move the controller in diagonals, and the script will look at the way that the either the mouse buttons, the joystick button's been pressed, or the direction, and based on those it will produce something, it will activate something. So we're going to leave our example behind now, and we're going to go on to the other examples on the demo disk, and let's see if a few of these work. Nightway Twitch, does that work? I wonder. Demo deck, let's assign the demo deck. Is that right? Demo disk, there it is. Assign that. Directory error, North view, Dan's examples picks. Demo deck, Dan's examples picks. North view. Okay, directory error picks. So obviously this isn't all pathed up and ready, but D64.1 demo disk. It looks like I've changed the name of the directory since I coded this, where the picks are, and that means it's confused. But anyway, with this one, I'm going to now use the joystick. You can see, pressing it once in any direction, or holding it in any direction. So if I hold it down, hold it here, hold it there, it will automatically keep going and as soon as I release the controller, it will automatically stop. And you can see the window in the top corner, so X is 0 and LY is 0. If I move that across, it's now 25 pixels across, and Y0 is now 50, 75, 100, 125, 150. And on this particular game you can see it's also got a room number, so that is room number 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If I go down 15, 25, 35, 45, all the way down to the bottom, all the way down to the last room, which is 99. And so this one, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it just means I can place this marker wherever I like. And if you notice next to me there is a red point in the square. If I move on to that square, that will give me one more onto the square. If I click that one, it goes up to 10, and then it respawns all the points all over again. So this is a demo which is included hopefully on my demo disc or something like that. It's pretty similar. If you boot it from the demo disc itself, hopefully you'll have no problems with it. But this is a simple kind of a dizzy panic kind of a game, something like that. We can collect up all the dots. You can see it's got a background of a 64 colour, low resolution, extra half bright picture, and that means that it's nice and colourful and digitised, and we can move our joystick around in any direction. So let's just look at how we did that. You can see because we're holding down the joystick, we've got the twitch enabled, and if we were just moving it once, we would have the once enabled. So with this one it's slightly different, and we've got all of the directions, as you can see, not just up and down, left and right. When this occurs, then if arg1 equals left down, i.e. the fire button, it doesn't do anything, and that is blanked out. If you have any of these semicolons, it just means that that's a comment or a rem statement, or whatever you like to call that. That's just a nothing. So we've blanked out the fire button, but if we pull it up left, it does something. If we pull the controller up right, it does something. If we push it up, it does something. If you push it left, push it right, push it down, and right down, and down left. So whichever way we pull in the controller, in this routine it says if we're pulling it down to the left, it adds 1 to the count, and if count's over 5, and it counts 5 jiffies before it moves one position. If we are moving, then it's saying if X is over 1 and Y is less than 50, and Y is less than 200, i.e. we're on the screen, I think let Y equals Y plus 25, i.e. the player Y, so it moves down in this case, and let X equals X minus 25, so we're moving across, backwards across to the left by minus 25. We're pulling it down right, which means it's going in this diagonal direction, plus to Y minus X. Let room equals room plus 9, and it's 10 or 11 or whatever, depending on the direction that you're pulling. Let count equals 0, i.e. it resets the count, because it only does this if it's above 5, and if it is above 5 you need to reset it again back to 0, and then do the collision. If we've collided with the dot, we can pick it up, and then it does the draw. It basically redraws the whole screen all over again, and it waits for another input. We then end that if command, end the if command, end that if command, and if there's nothing else going on, if remaining equals 0, then it builds some more dots. So if you've collected up all the dots remaining, then it builds some more up. So that's all that this is actually doing, and it's counting to 5 because we've got the twitch on. If it was just single, then we wouldn't need to do that, but that's all, as far as I know, this thing is actually doing. There's a few routines in here. Block, we can make a block, we can draw a block, build collision dots. So let's see what this does. Draw background BX BY, I'm not quite sure. Let's see what the collision does. If room equals room x1, let remaining. Alright, so if we collide with any of these dots, it reduces the remaining, and as we've seen, once the remaining is 0, it just draws them all over again. And this is the draw routine, and let's see, all those are remmed out, so it clears the window, it prints text x and y, which is what we've got up here. It then prints the room out, and you've seen them two lines, room and then room, to actually print the variable itself on the top line, and then it prints the score out. There's a rem there, so it's not doing anything. It's showing the brush dizzy x and y, which is whatever it is at the moment. X and y, you've seen as soon as we move the joystick, then it changes whatever x and y is, and it does the dots. It draws these lines on the screen. If I rem that out, it's not going to draw the lines. It looks up where the dots are, and it's looking up, and it's drawing a block. For some reason it's drawing this block. I've no idea why it does that, but hopefully if we ram out those lines, then it gets rid of them lines. You don't need those lines there. That's just a thing that I created to tell me what room I'm in and whereabouts we are, but of course you don't need those lines. We move diagonal down, so you can create, I mean, it does flash a lot because it's redrawing the screen every time. So this package is not meant for games, but you can get it to not flash sometimes, or minimize that flash in some ways. So it is possible. And this one, info, it just prints out what we got there. The screens, whether it's interlaced or not, what colours we're using. And so let's check out that button. What's it actually doing? On click, it's setting the draw mode. It's setting pen to 23 because we're in 64 colour mode. X2 equals screen width minus 14, so minus 114. So whatever screen width, that starts here, and let y equals 0 plus 40. So that's 0 plus 40. So that's the XY, and then it's already set the colour for some reason. It's drawing a rectangle, X2, Y2, which is that. It's then setting the pen to number 1, which is the gold. It's then printing on the screen whatever the screen width is at position X2 plus 2, so it's moving it down into that. Y2 plus 2, so it's just slightly in, and then it's printing an X, and then it's saying the screen height. Whatever the screen height is, it knows what screen height it is, it's printing it out. And interlace I've put because I didn't have enough room for an E, and then if it's interlace, which it knows already, it says it's false. So it prints whatever that out, and the colours, it's the screen colours it knows already, so we can just, it's the predefined variable, we can just text whatever it is, those two bars, screen colours, wherever we want it, and then print 8-way twitch on there. So that's precisely what that does. Not a great deal, and there's not that many routines in this little bit of a game, and you can check out all the other routines as well that I've got going on in this little package that I'm running at the moment. It's got a clock, it's got some kind of boing ball on there, ball brush, WB clock, fractals, mouse position detect. We've already done that by detecting X and Y, picture tests, various buttons and things like that. So the only other thing that I haven't really gone into, open a deck request here, let's get rid of this, is to have a quick look at the load and the save. So in this one, this is a tool that I've got going on that I'm working on at the moment. So you can see I've defined a number of buttons, and the buttons I've got fancy border around them, which is drop shadow. So it automatically creates the drop shadow. I haven't done anything with that. I've changed the font, so it's this font, and again, some fonts you can emboss them, outline them, underline them, shadow them. Ghosted font actually works, or at least it should do. So it looks like I've just put Let's drop shadow on that. You can change the colour of the drop shadow as well. Doesn't have to be like, change it to brown colour, and that will automatically also change the box as well that we've got set up. So I'll have to change that back to 130, change it back to 15, and then that should match. Sometimes it does that. It's a quirky package, but you can get around it. So then we're just buttons. These are just buttons, and if you click on one of these buttons, get started, all it does is to draw a rectangle which is the same colour as the background, and then it prints all this stuff on top of it. And then when you go back to the main menu, it just moves the buttons back to the top. It puts a border around it and draws this on the screen. So it's not doing a great deal, to be honest. It looks fancy, but it's not doing a lot. How do you get it to do stuff? Well, there's magic to it, and the very first card that you've got in the stack, in which case I've called it card 0, you can edit this and you can tell it to do something. So before the attachment, in this case I've got it to go to CLI, whatever it is, and I've typed in assign death in this case to char34, which is one of these characters, char34, which is another one of those co-op characters, and char10, which is the enter key. So it basically says assign this to wherever we are, enter, and that DOS var means that it now runs that command in CLI. So it assigns this entire thing to a new place called death, and then it sets the current directory to wherever it is. So in theory you don't have to install it. Wherever the package is, it'll assign death, that assign wherever it is, and then it'll assign the current directory to wherever it is. You don't even have to do that. You can just set the current directory to wherever it is, and guess what, it'll do that. So you don't have to do that. That's what I've done, because it means I can put down an absolute path. But that's what it does before it attaches anything, and it does anything. It sets up its own path, and then after that it does the title. Do title. So that's all it does. Every time you run this package, it then does the title, and the title is a routine. Look at that routine. There's only 5 routines. So if font equals 0, i.e. there's no font registered in the package because you've just run it the first time, let font name equals topaz, let font size equals 8, and then set the print font to whatever the font name is and font size. So that means you can change the font. Literally, you can load the font up, save the font, change the font, do it all on the fly. Whatever it is, whatever it detects, it'll set it up as topaz 8 in this case, and then it'll do that. And then it'll change the pen colour, it'll print out death and funeral and made with CanDo. And at the moment that is all it does, but eventually I'm going to move, well, I don't even need to move those objects. What it would do, if I needed to, would be to move object and whatever it is. So what objects have we got going on at the moment? We have got a button to tell us. So let's move the introduction, so that must be that, introduction button. Move object, insert the name. So let's move object, introduction, let's move that to, I don't know, 150 across and 30 down. So that now when we run that, it'll move that into that position. Let's just have it maybe 60. Move object, okay, 60. And you can turn that screaming on and off, so that when we run the object itself, i.e. card 0, goes to that, and then, well, if I had this set to 0, 0, which is usually, you can see that there, if I put that to -10, and that's to -10. If I can get my fingers to work. Size and origin. Oh no, that's width. So I'm changing the wrong one. So if I change this now to origin -10, that puts it -10, which is on the line above this, and -10, which is over there. So that means it gets rid of it. Or at least it puts it right on the top of the screen. So when I run this now, it means it moves that button to a fixed location, whatever I desire, and it still works. At least it will work if I browse it. Oh yeah, I haven't defined that button yet, but yeah, it still works even though I've moved the button somewhere else. So the button will automatically appear where you've got it set up as its origin. In this case it should be -20 X, -20Y, so we can't actually see it, and then it'll move it to where you've told it to move it. So these buttons aren't, well, they are fixed at the moment, but they don't have to be fixed. You can move the buttons all around just with the move object. And then we've got this load button, load file. What does that do? Well, let's have a look. This is load, and then it says load document death because we've already assigned the directory where this package is, and there is a file in there called example.txt. That's just a plain text file, and all it's got line by line is a list of items. So we're loading a document. From that, it's important to put it in the brackets, and it's called example.txt. You can ask for a document, or you can pre-program it in like I have, and I'm just going to call that document list, and then you tell it to work with that document list. Set length of the document to however many lines are in the document. So at the moment there's probably about 20 lines in it, each with something different on it. I set a position, doesn't matter what you call this variable, let's call it 1, and position on line is position, so we're moving the line to 0, 0, basically the first position on the first line. And then if string equals 0, do error, I'm not too worried about that. So options, so let day equals trim position string the line the day. So basically let day variable, I know this is complicated, but there's a variable in there called day, and so whatever the first line is, because that's where we're on, position 1, line 1, it trims that string to the end of the line, i.e. the entire line, and it puts it into the variable called day. So I haven't run the load routine yet, so it's not even in there, but it will. And then it moves position down by 1, i.e. it goes down by another line, sets the position to that position, let font name equals string the line. So whatever the second position is, it's going to be the font name. It reads that in and calls it the font name. And then on the third line it's the font size. On the fourth line it's a name, on the fifth line it's another name, sixth line it's another name. On this one it's dates, and some of these you can see that the file is going into a file array, and so all you need to do to set up an array is to put a variable name and to put something in square brackets after it. In this case I've called it 1. You can, call it 1 to a million, or you can call it something else like file array main, and that'll set up a variable in the slot called main in the variable file array. So it's easier if you're using numbers, but you can call it whatever you like, and that will put in all these logistics into an array. And you can see some of them are file arrays and some of them are number arrays, because as you've seen, variables operate differently if it's text or if it's a number. So if it's text, I'm putting it into a file array. If it's an actual number, then I'm putting it into a number array, and that keeps them separate. Because numbers, you can say let number array 3 equals number array 3 plus number array 4, and that will come up with that'll change that value on the fly. You can just add numbers together, where if it's text you can't say if date equals time plus value, because these are just text values. You can't add text values together, only numbers. So text has to be text, numbers have to be numbers, and the check mark is something else as well, a third array which takes colour of the check marks. So all it does is to work with the document, and it fills in all these variables with whatever it has listed in that document, so that as soon as I click on the load button, that will then load in all of that stuff into arrays. You can see it's printing it out into the document itself because it's already loaded it. To look at those variables, we can click on the variables from inside the editor or from within the main window itself. You can see the number of arrays and variables is very small, and I've got virtually everything on arrays. So in file array, you can see it says it's an array. You click on that, it's got all the names of the things that we needed to input as letters, and if we pair on that and look at the number array, it's got the stuff that we need to remember as numbers, like a date. And font name is Topaz, font size is 8. We've assigned death to this current directory. Day is currently day 1, you can see we're on day 1 at the moment. Complete is an array, i.e. day 1 is not complete, so position 1 says it's 0. And there's also a check array as well. So check array equals 1. So all these days, of which I've got 17 days listed, the check is for the check marks which appear at the bottom of some pages, which are these check marks over here, and you can switch those on and off. So once you've got all those checked, it changes the awaited input to day complete, because once you've got all those checked off, then that does it. So these check marks are simply, of course, buttons, and I'm overlaying on top of them buttons another graphic, and I've memorised the X and Y of every button, so when I click on it I'm just overlaying a different graphic on top of those buttons to say that it's checked from wherever the XY is for button 1, 2, 3 and 4. So you can use the let command to add those as variables, and then you can simply put a brush on top of them with the show brush command. So that's all the checks. You can see this is another one of those variables, and the numbers of course are listed in number form, so that all those can be listed, and if they're not present then it doesn't have to be loaded. If it's there it'll load it, but if it's not there it'll just load the next thing and the next thing. And of course we can save all of our variables as well to a file or to a variable. So I've loaded them up at this point, but we'll also save them up later on. So the only thing in this thing, this is the thing, there's a font manager, a loader of variables, buttons and start. So let's have a look at the fonts. This says it asks for a font from the fonts directory, and it calls that wherever that is, and as a relative value temp1. It then takes temp2, number of characters in temp1, it counts them all up. Temp3, it gets chars between 1 and 7. Temp2, oh no, temp1, it goes to temp1, it goes to position 7, so i.e. it ignores the word fonts, and it reads that in from the number of characters. So number of characters, well, whatever, it makes sense to me. It reads the font name from that bit, it finds the characters up to the slash, which is got to be the font name, and then it goes to the end of what we've just read in, because that's got to be the font size after the slash. It then reads in the font size, and then it basically puts it in there, and then it lets the font name, whatever the font name is, which it calls temp6. It then lets the font size to be whatever temp7 is, which will be the font size, and all we've done, and it then disposes them all as well, and then does start. So that is accessed with a pull down menu. If we go to the pull down menu that we've defined, it says change font. From here it just goes to the fonts and it says, right, which one do you want? So if we go to the font name 2 and click on this 7, it will then change all of the fonts that we've got listed, because if you remember, when the first lines, the first string, it says whatever the font is set to, change it to that font. So it literally does that. Change the font, it does exactly what you've just seen from that routine, down to the last pixel. So if I change it to this one, then changes it to that one. And these boxes I haven't changed, but you can see the actual print font you can change to whatever you like, and assign that to whatever you like. And all I did was literally, I mean absolutely literally, read in the absolute path of the font using this. So it says fonts 15A/8, and whatever that says, I've just read it in there. And well, it's not too bad. So you can change the fonts on the fly, of course. You can move all these boxes around on the fly. You can move all these buttons around, change the buttons, the border, change the location as well. So that's the font sorted out, and the loading, things like that. What else have I got? I've got some variables set up that I'm not actually using at the moment. Buttons is, well, if we're on day 2 and I click a button, it does something. It puts the check mark over the grab button. Whatever button 1x and button 1y is, it just puts a check mark over it. If it's day 3, then it puts the check marks over them. If it's day 4, it puts check marks over them. And then start checks whatever date we're on. It blanks everything out. It changes the font name and the font size to whatever that is that we've got set up. It then, if it's day 1, it moves the object fields wherever they need to be. It then sets the text in those particular fields to what we've just read in, what we've just loaded and stuck into the file array. You can see it says file array in position 1. That's the date that we're on at the moment, I think. Field 2, position 2, I think that's a name, somebody else's name. So it sets them up. Oh, well, if it was day 1, I'd be able to see it. It fills in the text in those from whatever we've just loaded. It sets an integer to field 7 and 8 from the number arrays that we've loaded, then prints loads of things on the screen. And if number array 1 is above 0, i.e. it exists, and number array 2 is above 0, number array 3 equals 0, i.e. filled it in, that means the day is complete. If none of the numbers are filled in, then the day is obviously not complete, is it? And then it goes through all of the days depending on what day you're on. It prints stuff out, moves stuff around, and most of the navigation is done with the buttons on the bottom, which simply go to the next day. Let day equal 1, and then go to start. So day equals day plus 1, so in this case it equals 8, does start. It realises that day is 8. It then changes the title, the window title, to whatever day it is, day 8, and then it marks all the buttons down as absolute values, moves all the buttons down to them, inserts everything it needs to, then it does the text. And then you can literally write down and insert whatever you like, and if you save it, those will be written down into array by working with that document, saving it up, back and forwards, things like that. And the progress report doesn't actually work at the moment. That just lists out on another screen all of these check buttons that we've got going on, so that we can see them all in one page. And we can't do anything at the moment because the lister is up there. You can't edit and activate things at the same time has to be in browse mode. So now if I click on the main menu, it should work again. And I can't actually save this up because I've completely messed up this this thing, but that's basically it for this part of the demo tutorial of CanDo. And you can see all of the things listed there. Most of those are practically useless, and as far as the routines, well, timers is critical, always use the timers, but as far as the routines go, get started, what's that? Okay, that's just the introduction page that we typed in before. So as far as the routines, all you need to do is to look up the lexicon page, and that will tell you what all the functions do, and then all you do is use all those functions one by one, find out what they do, make yourself a little demo, and then you can get on cracking with creating something with it. It could be a game, it could be a tool, it could be a utility, whatever you like. It can create anything, it can produce anything, show anything, play anything. And we haven't covered the music and the sound effects and things like that. You can queue those up, you can have those going on demand, on a key press, on a mouse click, anything you want. And if you want the mouse to be clicked, you have to create a huge button across the entirety of the screen, huge big button, and then wherever you click the mouse it'll register as a mouse click. It doesn't actually work with the joystick function, but you can click anywhere on a button that will register as a mouse click. So it hasn't got a left mouse button, but it does have a right mouse button. Or you can have a floating hitbox. If you're really clever, you can have a floating hitbox that floats under your mouse like this. It just floats directly under it, so that wherever you click on the screen, the hitbox will be under it. You click on it and that activates the left mouse button, whatever that is. You can set that up. So it's not perfect, but that's my introduction, at least, to CanDo, how to at least start it. And definitely starting up CanDo is one of the important things. And I'll just mention one last thing before we finish. If you create one routine, or any routines, and you want to look at other routines, well, for a start, if you type in any old junk, it's going to say, I don't understand any of this stuff, what, I don't understand it. So we're going to rem all that out, and then the automatic parser doesn't try to understand it. Rem it all out. And then we're going to add another routine, doesn't really matter. And then if we want to see what we've just written on our first routine, we can click on routines again, click on our first routine, whatever it is, it'll then list it on the screen. We can then edit it, change it, add to that. Once we've finished, we can click on OK, and it'll return us back to the screen that we were just on before. So that means we can look at one screen and then look at another one. That's a hidden feature, you're going to have to use it. You can chain any number of screens anywhere you like and go backwards and forwards perhaps between them. Not quite sure, but you can definitely do that by going to the routines and just loading in one on top of another. That definitely comes in handy. And again, we haven't really touched the sound tool, but you can select the file name, select the voice, select the channel, OK, and that'll play a sound. There's a music player as well, and the file requester, the FX brush. We haven't really touched upon the advanced features. You can activate things from DOS, you can do all kinds of DOS commands, CD stack and run whenever you want, and change the layout, stuff like that. Anyway, thank you for watching, or at least witnessing, this introduction to CanDo. And you can put everything on one card, you don't have to have tons of cards to do everything. And you can see it's pretty easy. You just type stuff out and it comes, spits it out. You don't have to compile anything necessarily. But once you've saved it up, if you go to the compiler that we saw before, in the utilities, the deck binder, that will then create an executable, and it should run. If you bind that with a library, it should run from anywhere and not require anything and you've got the multi-binder as well if you want to, the music, the sounds, the pictures, everything else, the brushes, all built into one. So thank you for viewing this introduction to CanDo, and maybe we'll see you again in another one sometime soon.